Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. I'm Dr. Moby, and today we are honored with great guests all the way from UK. Anthony, how are you, sir?
Hey, well, thanks, Dr. Moby. How are you?
I'm good. I am blessed. Thank you. So, tell us about yourself.
So, I am originally from Australian. I don't know if you can tell from the accent. It's definitely not a local UK one. So, I lived in Australia for kind of 30 years. I worked in advertising for quite a long time. And then I moved here 4 years ago, and I do, as well as my day job, I do a lot of comedy, stand-up comedy. I've done shows kind of right around the world, including, doing nights in Sweden where everybody else performed in Swedish. And up until I spoke, I wasn't sure that anybody really would understand English. And so that's always a nervous thing to tell a joke and not sure if people fully even understand the language, but that was really cool. So yeah, that's kind of the very short version.
Okay, very nice, very nice. And I always, looking for comedians, and comedy is the most difficult thing. You can do a lot of other shows very easily, but comedy is one of the most difficult thing to make somebody laugh. I always find it very interesting, and luckily we had few of over the several months I have interviewed few, but I'm always looking for a really good comedian so we can listen to them. So tell me about your journey. Tell me, how did it start?
So I would say for me, the big thing that I've realized as an adult, and it's not a funny thing to say, but I've realized that a lot of my comedy probably started with anxiety. I wasn't diagnosed with anxiety until sort of in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. And it really surprised me when that happened, because I'm loud. I put myself on stage and tell everyone shut up because I've got important stuff to say. And so you would think that the kind of confidence and the extrovertedness would not sit hand in hand with it. But I think what I've increasingly realized is what I've done for a lot of my life is, if something makes me anxious or makes me nervous, I want to talk about it. That's my natural desire. I'm an expressive person. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want to be the person sitting in the corner going, oh, this sucks, this makes me, I'm scared about this. And so instead, what I would do is joke about it. And that is how I could express it without making other people uncomfortable. And I think just through tricking people into listen to me whinge over a long enough period of time, I kind of started to develop the skills to tell jokes.
Okay, yeah, that is very nice, very nice. And so tell me a little bit about, if you remember any of your first performance.
Oh, yeah. So the first time I got up on stage was at a kind of open mic night, right? So I'd been watching comedy and loved comedy for a long time. And there was this particular kind of, every kind of new comedian would start at this one open mic night. And I was going to go to do it. I'd say, yeah, this week I'm going to get up, and I'd go and I'd chicken out, and then I'd do it again, and I'd go back the next week and I'd go, yeah, this week's the week I'm going to get up and I'm going to tell my jokes and I'm going to figure it out. And then I'd chicken it out. And then I think about the 5th or 6th week I went, and there was this one guy who was still to this day the worst comedian I've ever seen. He was terrible. He was so bad, in fact, that I went, well, if he's allowed to do it, I should be too. And so I signed up off the back of seeing him, because I was like, at least, if nothing else, I'm not going to be as bad as that guy.
So people were throwing something, or they were cheering, go.
I think more than that and worse than that is just the level of cringe, like the audience feeling embarrassed, like as an audience member feeling embarrassed for the performer, and knowing that's what everybody else in the room feels. And to be fair, even as a performer, right, not always does an audience love you. Every now and then you get an audience that they're not the right person for you, and they're not the right crowd for you, and you're not the right, at that time anyway, you just can't connect, right? But you'd much rather an audience that interacted with you, that yelled at you, because then you can still win them back. Like if somebody yells, you suck at me or whatever, you can respond and you can engage them and you can get them back. But worse than that, an audience just sitting there silently feeling sorry for you, you're never changing their mind.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, if there's interaction and they are kind of somehow, whether they're yelling or screaming, whatever, at least you can get them engaged. But if they are totally dead, then that's very hard, very hard. So do you remember any of your first performance jokes, or do you have anything memorized right now?
Yeah, I can still remember. So there is one of the first jokes I ever wrote that it's the only joke that made it into my special that I released from that set. But it's I think it's a sentimental favorite for me, and it also starts kind of the story I tell on stage, which is I had a near death experience. It's not as scary as they say. Your whole life doesn't flash before your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But I did think about what I would have seen if that had happened to me. And I only had three memories. That is not good enough. But the worst thing for me is that two of those memories were just really nice pizzas that I've had.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So you had out of those three, two were pizzas. Oh my God. What was the third?
To be honest, I actually don't think it wasn't that two were really pizzas. It was more that I was having a moment. Actually, so the story behind that joke is that I was having bad lung pains, and I went to the doctor, and they got me some X-rays, and they said, it's probably nothing, but we're just checking for. I can't remember the first couple of things, but then I remember the last thing they said was lung cancer, and they said it as if it was nothing, like, oh, it's probably nothing, but it's, we're just checking for this, and this, and then lung cancer, and it kind of rang in my head, and it's like, oh, you can't say it's probably nothing and then also say we're checking for lung cancer in the same sentence. It's not how it works, And I remember driving home, and I just felt, and I'm sure it's a very natural thing to feel, right? I just felt not ready, and I hadn't done enough, and then when I was thinking that, I was like, oh, what would I even see if my life flashed before my eyes? And I thought, oh, that's a funny thing.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing that people don't think about, right? Like, what would you? And so that's how the joke came about.
That's very nice. Very, very nice. Very, very honest, but also, makes you laugh. And, I think you're right. You made a joke out of very serious situation. And, of course, if anybody tells me that they're looking at the X-ray and they're looking for cancer or something, I mean, it worries all of us. The word cancer is like, it's not astrological sign. It is what it is, and then we all get worried, of course. Yeah, well, that is very interesting. So what, any other you'd like to share, any other performance or any other joke you have in mind?
Yeah, I'll tell you kind of, it's an interesting one, right? Because that was the first joke. This is like a story that kind of, and I'll tell it as a story because it is one of my favorite stories to tell. And it is very interesting now because obviously it's been illegal to tell jokes on stage for a year.
Yeah.
It is interesting to think about how much this joke has changed in a year. So what happened was I had been seeing a girl a little bit, and we went on like 9 dates over about 12 dates over the course of about 9 weeks. So more than a date a week. It was going pretty well,
wow.
Right? And then she sent me a message that said, hey, I'm really enjoying our time together. Come over to my house on Saturday. I've got a secret special surprise for you. Wow. And I thought, there's some kinky stuff going to happen, I thought, I see where this is going. And I got to her house, and she had a car packed ready for an excursion, right? And then we drove, and this was back home in Melbourne. We drove like an hour and a half out of my hometown, and we got towards a local wineries. I was like, oh, this is where the surprise is. We're going to drink wine. Lovely day. Great.
Yeah.
Then we drove past. Mm-hmm. And then we got towards the local animal sanctuary an hour further past, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to see the animals. That's really cute. And then we drove past, and then we drove about an hour and a half past that to the middle of nowhere. Like, I couldn't give you any reference point, right? And she's driving, and I'm there going, oh no, she's gonna kill me. Like, this is how it ends for old mate Anthony. Here in the middle of nowhere. And she gets to this kind of national park. It's abandoned. It's in the middle of nowhere. And she pulls up the car, and she I think for the first time, she looks at me and she realizes how weird this would look like from my perspective. And she says, oh my God, I'm so sorry. This isn't what it looks like. I'm a doomsday prepper. And so her big surprise was that she was going to show me what she'd been preparing for the end of the world. And for 2 years, when I told that joke, we all laughed because we all agreed that she was the crazy one, right? But now I'm the idiot in the new world. She's got the right idea. It's ridiculous. But anyway, so she says, I'm a doomsday prepper, and she says, hey, do you want to see it? And I thought, oh, when am I going to get the chance to do this again? So we go, and we're looking, and it's like this kind of wooden shack, like hut thing that I think she hasn't even built. She's just found and claimed squatters' rights on. And I just remember looking at this thing, and I remember thinking, well, there are only two things I can do here. One is to break up with her because this whole thing is crazy. Or the other is to marry her because this is the closest someone in my generation gets to owning property.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So also tell me, but it sounds maybe it could have been romantic that she would say, okay, that's a doomsday, but the last person I'm gonna on earth will be you.
So that is the interesting thing, right? Because that is one way to look at it, is that it's a big show of trust, a very romantic gesture.
Yeah.
The other is that there were 9 to 10 weeks where we were dating, where she thought, if the world ends, I'm going alone. I'm not taking him with me.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So, wow, that's very fascinating. I've never heard that kind of date. But that's very nice, and very original. Very original. That's very nice.
Yeah. Well, I think if you start with things that actually happen to you,
yeah,
it's a lot easier to be original because there's only so many points of view on the world, but your point of view combined with your set of experiences is as unique as you're ever going to get.
Mm-hmm. But that's good. So I curious to know what happened in then. Did you break up or?
Yes, very much so. We broke up in the car on the drive home, so we had a very, very awkward, very long drive.
I am so sorry.
I think it all's well that ends well. I have met my beautiful, lovely wife, and we've got a lovely life together. So I think it's definitely for the best.
Well, maybe you appreciate her better because you have met different kind of people before, so you know how precious is this one.
Oh, that is absolutely true. I think my wife and I met in our 30s, and one of the things that happens when you meet someone at that time is you've kissed a lot of frogs, right? And so I think by very nature of that, it means that when you do find somebody that you connect with, it's all the more special because you know how hard it is out here. Maybe at 20, it's very easy to romanticize, going out on the town and meeting lots of people and getting lots of experience. And to be fair, there are times in life that is good, but what you very quickly learn is that for every good experience, particularly as you get older, I think for every good experience like that, you have to go through 5, 6 that are just boring and 2 or 3 that are downright crazy and unpleasant.
Yeah, no, that's true. So at least, we can appreciate that. And maybe that's true that everybody has their partner figured out already. It's written about. And, when you meet them, somehow you meet them, but this was a special person for everyone, I guess. That's my belief, right? So,
Mhm.
and it's made up in somewhere above us, right?
Mm.
So but it's very nice. But I think good thing is, so how often are you doing comedy now?
So right now it's been a while because it's kind of been illegal for a year, and I don't love doing virtual gigs too much because I think comedy is a two-way relationship, right? I tell my personal stories and my jokes, and like I said, a lot of it comes from anxiety, and the people laugh and they go, yeah, we get ya, we get ya. And on a Zoom call, even though they're laughing, it's not, because it's not in the same room, it's not physical, you don't get the vibrations, you don't get the adrenaline. And so it feels a lot like being at prom and having to dance with the teacher because nobody would dance with you. Um,
No.
like all the parts are the same, but it doesn't feel right. There's nothing in it. And so I've not really been doing stand-up for the last year. I've been doing a lot of podcasting instead. And what I'm hoping is that, in a couple of months when stages open up again, what I will do is go back through the conversations that I've had and go, okay, these are the things that I thought were funny, and now I've got a bunch of jokes, and hopefully I've got a lot of new jokes as if I was performing for a year, but without having to get on stage, because that was not possible.
Okay, so about also the jokes. I mean, a lot of actually comedy. I mean, I watched late night comedies, and I watched Stephen Colbert, and I watched also. I think there's another British one. He
John
comes.
Oliver?
Yeah, not John Oliver. I think I forgot his name. He comes also. But anyways, I watch him, and I said, usually the current political situation, especially in US, was giving a lot of comedy, acts to all these performers, and they had so much material because of how what president would say or not say, and that was really getting their ratings up. So do you also make those jokes with the political situation, or the politics, or the current current situation is sad with COVID, but
Yeah. So I would say kind of is the answer. On a format like a podcast, or if I was recording something for TV or a massive audience in the moment, then yes, I think it is always good to be able to, and to be honest, in a small comedy room, it may not be politics. What it might be is just looking around the room and, this is a funny thing that I can point out, and it roots us all in the moment, and the audience know that this is live and this is happening for them, I think the difficulty with talking about politics as a stand-up comedian today is that the internet's so fast, right? And these
yeah.
kids have YouTube, and they've got Photoshop, and they've got TikTok, and they've got all of this media that they can smash at each other. And so as a stand-up, all you've got is your voice and your microphone, and you write out your little joke and you get on stage and you say it, right? But if back in the days of, let's go Joe Biden today. Joe Biden says something ridiculous. Joe Biden says every American needs to wear a nappy, right? And he says that at 9 a.m. And then I don't get on stage until 8:30. And in between 9 a.m. and 8:30, all of the memes of that joke that is possible have already come out. So you get on stage and you go, here's what I think about Joe Biden's nappies. And they're like, yeah, we saw it. We saw all the memes. You know what I mean? And that's why I think I'm much more interested in talking about what is my experience with this thing, because nobody's making a meme about the time I dated a doomsday prepper, right? That is new information to people.
So yeah, that is true. There could be, but I'm sure, everybody has their take, and they might, do differently or say. I mean, ideas still come. You're right. There are so many already there, but I mean, everybody has a unique perspective.
Yeah,
like you have.
I think it's easier. It's definitely easier for TV, right? Because between the time something happens and the time you go on TV is quite short. But with stand-up comedians, like most of us are writing towards a special or an hour, and you know, the most prolific of us, when we're in our best, we're doing 1 hour a year that we do at all the festivals. And again, particularly recently in the recent times, if I write a joke today about the dumbest thing that happens politically or the most interesting news story that happens politically, and then I go on stage in August and tell that joke, the amount of stuff that has changed in the world is so big now. You know, it's not this. I still remember the Bush era where comedians would write a joke about one dumb thing George Bush said, and they'd tell it for years and years and years. But could you imagine if you tried to, like, you know, every day it gets dumber and crazier and weirder, and if you I think political comedy is a lot harder now than it ever was, because the politics is weirder and the ability for people to just get all the jokes out is so much quicker.
Yeah, and that's true. So do you also do some mimicking, or do you do singing, or any of those?
Sometimes I do some singing and people tell me to stop. No, I think I'm very much more I think storytelling stand-up comedian. You know, I like to take people on a journey. I like people to get a glimpse inside what my head is like and what my life is like and what I'm thinking. And I hope that I do it in a way that is fun and funny, and also that they can see the bits of themselves where we align enough that it's relatable, but then also the bits where it's different enough that it's funny.
Okay, great. I also want to ask you about, you know, what kind of keeps you going? What motivates you?
I think it's kind of that point of like sharing things with people, right? Like stand-up comedy is one of the very few things in the world where you can get up on stage and talk to a room full of people about how you think and what you feel and what you think. It's all, if you want, it can be close to philosophy, it can be close to therapy, it can be very silly, it can be whatever you want to express. And the only contract is that occasionally, that within that, you make people laugh. But you can make people laugh in a super emotional way. You can make people laugh in an uncomfortable way. You know, you can shock people into laughing. There's a lot of ways you can make people laugh.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming to our show. We have reached the end. Any final message or any final thoughts you have for our audience?
No, thank you so much for having me. If they want to find me, I've got a website, so just www.anthonyjeannot.com. You can find my comedy, podcast, everything there.
Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure seeing you. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.